I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Hey, you guys, and welcome back to the News du Jour, a calmer space to consume the news. So, real quick, before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to chat for a second about my social media presence and Instagram, etc. So, you probably already follow our main account, which was sugarfreemedia.co. We recently switched it over to It's Annie Bowles because that was primarily built as a personal brand, and I wanted to continue to be able to give you guys that type of content. So it's going to stay a personal brand, and we will be starting a brand new sugarfreemedia.co page. It actually already exists, but we will be, putting out content starting in 2024 that is exclusive to that page. But for the meantime, I wanted to make sure you guys are following us on Instagram at newsdujour.podcast to make sure you are staying up to date, all things News du Jour specific. So these are things I might not even share on my personal page. Milestones, updates in merchandise coming very soon, as well as just general updates and things I think you guys should know about. We're going to be breaking down different news terms and basically more info type posts that you're not going to get directly from the podcast. So it's just designed to keep you guys informed in general, but also informed about the podcast itself. So again, that is at newsdujour.podcast on Instagram, and it's the same thing on TikTok. Okay, so today we do have 3 longer stories for you guys and 1 mini story. Let's jump in. So for our mini story, I wanted you guys to be aware that Nikki Haley had a town hall sit down with CNN, just like Donald Trump did. So you guys can watch that long format video online if you're interested. Her pitch: she's experienced, but younger than both Trump and Biden. So I feel like the experienced part of it is more a dig at Ron DeSantis, saying that he's only been a governor. He doesn't have like White House experience. So yeah, very interesting pitch. And you guys can watch the long format to see what you think for yourself. Okay, and for our first longer story today, we do have to discuss the sonic boom / plane crash scenario. I don't know if you guys have already heard of this whole fiasco, but it is a strange series of events that I feel like we're going to get more info on at some point because it was just so bizarre. But basically, it all began when it was reported that across the DC area and surrounding areas as well, on Sunday, there was a huge, loud boom that everyone is describing as a sonic boom. And it was heard throughout the area, like I said, but rattling coffee tables and knocking books over. Obviously, it alarmed everyone, and people began looking for answers. Military leaders pretty quickly put out messages online on Twitter saying that the sound was related to a plane serving some type of military function and that it was, an approved official function. And, when I initially read what they tweeted out, it almost sounded like they had been testing something, but then more information came to light. Apparently, a quote-unquote business plane took off in Tennessee and headed for Long Island. The plane abruptly became unresponsive, though, as it was getting very close to its destination and took a U-turn heading south towards D.C. The plane literally flew over the U.S. Capitol, which, as you guys can imagine, is some of the most restricted and monitored airspace probably on the planet. In a panic, the U.S. military members assembled a team of fighter jets to essentially run the plane away from the city. Eventually, that plane crashed in the Shenandoah Valley, which is a rural area of Virginia, very mountainous and beautiful, but that's where the plane crashed. The military has said that the boom actually came from one of these fighter jets traveling at supersonic speeds. No survivors were found involved in the plane crash. It has been discovered that the passengers on board were actually a family of some pretty huge Trump donors. A man by the name of John Rumpel came forward saying that his daughter, 2-year-old granddaughter, their nanny, and a pilot were the passengers on this plane. He claimed that they had been visiting him in North Carolina, which I found was kind of strange because initially it had been said that the plane took off from Tennessee. So that's a confusing detail, and that they were headed to their home in the Hamptons. And that was also a little bit confusing because it said the plane was headed toward Long Island. Maybe you can't land in the Hamptons, but I would imagine there's some private airports there. Don't know. Don't quote me on that. That's just my confusion on this subject. No one knows, though, why the plane went off course, why it flew over the nation's capital, and why it crashed. Unfortunately, it is known that the family dropped about 30,000 feet per minute during their crash, so there's simply no way for anyone to survive that. And these events are super tragic, but I hope that we can get a little bit more insight into what exactly happened and why it was that they began flying over DC, because that was pretty alarming. And especially with the family's political connections, it just all seems very murky and complicated. So I will definitely keep you guys posted if any more information comes to light. For our next story today, Mike Pence makes it official. It has long been suspected that Mike Pence would make his own bid for the presidency in 2024. And now that rumor has come to fruition. His name is officially added to the ballot. He has filed the paperwork to run against his former boss, President Donald Trump. Now, it will be very interesting to see these two go head to head. How much will having Trump on his resume plague Pence or help him? How will he address the times that he stood by Trump and the times that he deserted him? He reportedly plans to kick off his campaign with a celebration on his 64th birthday. Yes, he is almost 2 decades younger than Biden and more than a decade younger than Trump, and I'm sure he chose this date to point that out. It will be fascinating to see how age factors into this race. The candidates are getting older and older. Will America draw a line of how old is too old to run? Will we see more Gen Xers step up to replace these baby boomers or some millennials even? But back to Pence for a moment. He does not have a website up and he doesn't have any campaign ads going that I could find, but we will definitely take a look at those once I see them and do a deeper dive into his story and who he is as a person and a candidate. And at that stage, we will, of course, dive deeper into his presidential platform. That said, on the campaign trail, Pence will almost certainly take a more centrist view and try and paint himself as more a la Bush or a la Reagan compared to his ultra-right competitors, Trump and DeSantis. He is polished. He has the know-how, but does he have the following he needs to sway the party to his cause? Will he be able to rebrand himself after serving 4 years under the Trump banner? We'll just have to wait and see. And for our final story today, I wanted to let you guys know about inaccurate cancer test results being sent out to hundreds. So there's nothing more important than our health, right? And that's why I always make a point to cover health-related stories. This is just a short one, but I wanted to make you guys aware. So right as Elizabeth Holmes is headed into prison for over a decade for crimes related to her fantastical testing company, Theranos, another testing company also seems to be doling out unreliable results. There is a company called Grail that makes blood tests for cancer, and they have come out in saying that inaccurate test results were electronically sent out to about 400 patients last month. These people were told by the testing company that they may have cancer when the results were showing that they didn't. Grail has said that this was a simple software issue and not an issue with the tests themselves. But after so many similar lies were thrown out by Elizabeth Holmes, it's hard to imagine that this isn't going to be double checked. And I hope there's some sort of third party involved in this who can, make sure that they're not lying about their testing protocol. And that for today is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, "A lie left unanswered becomes the truth." If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to listen. A rate and review or shout out on social media would mean the world to us and help us be able to keep creating the news du jour. But the best way to support all of our work is to become a patron at www.patreon.com/sugarfreemedia. You can also follow us on social media under sugarfreemedia.co on Instagram and just sugarfreemedia, all one word, on TikTok. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
Broadcasting from Oklahoma.